Now, this is season 1 of the show, The Art of Danso, Principle 7, Behind These Walls. What this principle means is how we spend our time in our house is very, very important. Now, your house is either a castle, is a fortress, or is a prison, one of your own making, and you can choose which one it is. So, how we spend, like you can say, a third of our life we spend sleeping, another third of our life we spend working, and the other third of our time we spend doing whatever, whether it's eating or hanging out with friends or just chilling at home. Now, that time that you spend at home is very, very important. Now, I shared in a previous video that there are 3 things that make you who you are. So if you look at your personality, you have your genetics. You get that half from your mom, half from your dad. You can't change those things very well. I mean, you can choose how to control different ways. Epigenetics, we're not going to get into that for now. The other third is your environment. And then the last third is your will, your choices that you make. We'll share about this in another video. Now, you go to the second one, your environment, the way it shapes you is very, very important, because even your genes, they get expressed. So you have all these genes, you have thousands and thousands of genes that you're born with. You get from your mom, from your dad, and which ones get expressed are determined on the environment that you're placed in. So if you have 2 twins, if you separate them at birth, I mean, you have the same genetics, but you separate them, they will grow up to be 2 completely different people, even though the genetics are the same, but their environment is different. So they're raised differently because of their environment. Their environment shapes you, and they'll make different choices. So their will is different. You can get into that later. But what you do in your house a third of your life is very, very, very important. Now, I lived in all sorts of places. I lived in good places and I lived in bad places. I lived in a nice house. I lived in a bad house. I lived on the street. I lived in jail. When I was 22, I was pretty much homeless for that whole year. Now, I didn't really live in a tent. Most of it was in jail, or a lot of it was on the street. I mean, I had a job when I was not in jail. I had a job. And I remember, I was just addicted to drugs. I was addicted to Oxycontin, and most of my money just went to that. So I'd get paid, and then it would all be gone, and there'd be nothing left. Sometimes, like, I would stay in a hotel or something. A couple times I'd run out of money. Payday would be a few days away. So I remember one night, I was walking around Seattle downtown. This was 2007, no, 2008, 2009, something, a long time ago. I was 22. I was walking down the street, and I was hanging out with some people, and they all started complaining to me. They're like, oh, I'm here because of this, I'm here because of that. And each one had like a story, a reason why they were where they were. But I remember thinking to myself, not a single one of these people has taken responsibility, for their circumstances. They're not willing to live up that maybe they had something to do with why they ended up the way they were. And that always stuck with me. This was a place I decided that I did not want to be. So a couple days later, I got paid and went into a hotel. And I never really stayed on the street too much. Even though I was homeless for most of that year, very few of those days were actually like on the street, because I was a little bit smarter than that. I always had a job. I always knew how to hustle. I knew how to work. But I've lived in other places before that were very, very uncomfortable. I lived with people. I mean, the people you have around you is very important. We're not going to get into that. But I lived in a house that made me uncomfortable. So I wasn't able to use it for what it was really meant to be. I mean, your house, like I said, is either a castle or is it a prison of our own making. So a lot of people, they spend most of their time home. They're scared to leave. If you look inside their house, they have like pathways that they make because they have so many boxes, they have so much clutter, they have so much crap. They don't know what to do. They get scared to throw it away. So if you walk inside the house, you automatically feel depressed just by being there. And other people's houses, you walk in there, you're like, okay, here's a successful person. You look around at the things that they have in this house. How do they arrange the furniture? How clean is everything? This is very, very important, because you spend a third of your life, technically, maybe a half of that, whatever, a sixth of your life, a fifth, in your house when you're not sleeping. And what you do with that time is very important. But how you have everything around you, how everything looks, is also very important. For example, there was this lady. long ago, about 500-600 years ago in Renaissance Italy. The Caterina Sforza, Lady of Forlì. Now, her people loved her. When she was young, when she just got married, her husband, he was a douchebag. He didn't know how to take care of business properly. She had to take over the family business. And she had to start earning money for the family. She eventually gathered some troops around her. She had a little army that answered to her and nobody else. And when her husband's castle was laid siege by another army, she took command of all the soldiers of that castle and she defended the place. Now there was a big battle. Her side was losing. And what she did is she hopped on her horse, pulled out her sword, and she charged to the very front of the battle. And she decided to lead her troops by herself. Now, 600 years ago, 500 years ago, no one ever seen such a thing. Women didn't lead their men in battle, but she did. Now, she never got to the line of battle. Her troops gathered around her. They protected her, but she motivated them. She motivated them in a certain way where they rallied behind her and then they won the day. And she became really famous after that. Everybody loved her. And when she was older, she made a mistake. So as much as her people loved her, as much as everybody through Renaissance Italy worshipped her, you can say, when she became about her early 40s or something, she got the idea in her head that she was going to build a very, very nice castle. The best castle anybody in Italy has ever seen. And she started to tax her people. She taxed them more and more and more and took more money from them. She did build a very, very nice castle, but by the end of the project, everybody started to hate her because she took so much resources from her own people that she pretty much bankrupted her own city just to build herself this very, very nice castle. Machiavelli said, be wary of building fortresses, because if you're secure in your land, you don't need to build a big fortress because the people will protect you if you trust those people. But if you're scared of outside individuals, then you need to build a very big fortress, because when those outside army comes in, you can hide behind there. But if you're secure in your place, if the people love you, then you don't need a very, very big fortress because they will protect you. Now, this was her mistake. So in the end, when Cesare Borgia, or maybe it was Juan Borgia, one of the Borgia brothers, laid siege to the castle, her own people turned against her. They gathered around the castle. They wanted to pull her down because of the mistake that she made. So she ended up being stuck in that castle. She wasn't even able to leave anymore. So you can say that her grand fortress became her prison. Now you ask yourself, what the hell does that have to do with my life? I don't live in a big castle. No, but you have a house. You have 4 walls around you. And those walls can either become a fortress for you or become a castle, or it can become a prison. It just depends on how you treat them. What do you do when you're at home by yourself? I spend a lot of time reading. I spend a lot of time training, so I have a gym. So when I come home, my house is a place of peace for me. I'll sit down and read a book, or I'll do some yoga, or I'll clean up a little bit, or I'll go work out in my gym. Either way, I'm very, very careful with the time that I spend in my house. My house is a place of peace. So if somebody comes in here with some drama or some anger, I'm like, no. You can't do this in my house. Get the hell out. Because I'm very, very careful of how I spend my time at home. And this is the principle behind these walls.